Jaya Rama Krishna Bhuvana Mangala Jaya Mata Shama Sutta Ati Niramala Jaya Vivekananda Paramadayala Prabhu Ramana Shashuta Jaya Sri
Om Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachu Brahm Jyotisham Jyoti Tadyadatma Vidho Vidhu. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, free of any and all taint, the essence of everything which all beings seek, either consciously or unconsciously. There shines Brahman. It is that which the wise ones exult in. It is that which the Guru teaches. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Resha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagadja Akanda Rupa Stiti Reva Moksho Brahmadvitiye Shrutayaha Pramanam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. It is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman, time, space, living beings, and the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is pure and perfect, and one without a second. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings, and may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Welcome today in this Sunday afternoon class on Vedanta. We have been presenting classes in the Advaita tradition, that is non-dualism, the I and my Father kinds of teachings that are so abundant in India and so many of the revealed scriptures as we just chanted about. So last month and this month we are going on with the Advaita Vedanta series. Although, as we've said, Advaita Vedanta impinges so much upon Vishishta Advaita and Dvaita, that is qualified non-dualism and dualism. All of these other teachings which are more practical, which are less cerebral, less abstruse, are also very pertinent to our daily lives. So the scriptures and the seers allow for them. It's just that if they had their druthers, they'd be speaking all the time about this subject of non-duality. But admittedly, it's very difficult to speak about this reality, this non-dual Brahman, or Allah, or Almighty Father, Tathagata Garbha, Buddha nature, by whatever name you call it in whatever tradition, very difficult to speak of it. So that's probably why they're silent most of the time, many of these seers, especially when they go into states of samadhi or satori or nirvana or a sampragyata samadhi, as the father of yoga called it. So necessarily then, when we enter into a class like this, we sort of gravitate to the qualified non-dual teachings, which are wisdom, which are knowledge. They necessarily visit the aparavidya category. And what we mean by that is not secular subjects, because the rest of the world, for a greater percentage of the time, is concentrating on those. We get them everywhere we go. Unfortunately, these non-dual teachings are given very rarely, and also at home they need to be given to your children. We wish they had been given to us here in the West as we were growing up. We had to have heard them a lot earlier, and it would have saved a lot of suffering, which is one of the reasons why these teachings are presented, is to get rid of unnecessary suffering. I would say it's impossible to get rid of suffering unless you go into that non-dual state of samadhi, of course. But there's lots of unnecessary suffering that can be alleviated and destroyed. And these teachings are the best way of doing it, according to the seers and sages and saints of all traditions, all religious traditions. So in that vein, we're going to go on with today's class, maybe about an hour and a half of teaching and then a break. And then we'll go on with a shorter second half. So Advaita Vedanta is the subject at hand, and necessarily we have to speak around it, we have to point to it. However, we don't want to be like those students who were with Lord Buddha, and when he pointed to the moon, they looked at his finger. That's actually rather a good teaching, not to look to the personality, but more to look toward the principle. As our great teacher, Swami Vivekananda, said, God is a principle, not a personality. So the longer we can keep the personality worship from hampering the tattvas, the principles and the teachings that we have to learn, the better it will be for us and for the world. Let people find the avatars and the gurus and the preceptors on their own, because that's a matter of more of the heart and of bhakti yoga. But as we were saying last week at this very location here in Hawaii, is that bhakti and jnanam are like the two wings of the bird. So we have this need to integrate the yogas. That is, we sit and we take teachings for a few hours, then we go home and we sit in meditation, and we find that our meditations are fueled in a very positive way. You might say, well, I thought we were supposed to get rid of thought. Yeah, we'll probably get rid of all the mundane and conventional thoughts that are constantly going through your head. But very rare is the person who can immediately jump to the non-dual and worship in such a way that is immediately a matter of coalescence and perfection. So one of the ways in which we meditate is on the Jnana Marg, on the path of wisdom. And if we replace the negative thoughts in our head, the klista vrittis, as it's said in yoga, with the aklista vrittis, the more positive thoughts, then it will be very good for our mind. And of course, our mind is what needs the transformation, not our soul. Our soul is already perfect in Vedanta. It's just a matter of trying to connect with that soul, find it and then connect with it, which is a matter of disidentifying with the unreal and identifying with the real. Nitya, anicca, vastu, viveka, one of the great Sanskrit sayings in our tradition. Nitya, the eternal, anicca, the non-eternal, and vastu viveka, the difference between the two. We must discriminate between what is essential and what's non-essential. Or if you want to put it in easy words that are familiar to us, try and separate the wheat from the chaff in your everyday life. And then once you do that, don't just say, I've done it. Then concentrate on transforming that wheat into a nutritious meal and eat it, imbibe it. So that's what we do with this wisdom yoga. It's very effective. It's, as Vivekananda said, the quickest way to destroying ignorance is with wisdom. And Sri Krishna agrees in the Bhagavad Gita when he says, Nahi gyanena sadrishyam pavitramiha vidyate. In all the world there is no greater purifier than wisdom. So we can work on the pH level of our blood in our body, but I prefer to work on the pH level of my mind with a pH called philosophy. And that transforms my mind into a image cut in the divinity of the Lord, if you want to put it in Bhakti terms. And then my body simply follows suit. My body and senses follow suit. This is actually one of the great secrets of Lord Buddha and Sri Krishna and other great souls, that they've come to us with a pure mind already. I'll have a teaching for you today about the pure mind, because we have been speaking in terms of the Jnana Matra, if you remember, the wisdom particle. The wisdom particle, I'm positing that sort of as a contrast to the material particle. So the material particle, we know, is changing at a very swift rate. And there's subatomic particles that are changing at a billionth of a second. So your house actually here is built on sand, the shifting sands, and not the bedrock of a particle that's probably more real, more substantial, more essential. So all the objects that we're encountering in everyday life are really appearing to us as an illusion or as an appearance only, non-actual. So if you were going to separate the wheat from the chaff, you'd probably want to see the essence of the object, and probably on your way to do that, you'd find the seer is more important than the seen. And possibly the predicament that you've fallen into is that the seen has become master of the seer. Say, for instance, watching a person watching TV all day, then they're under the bondage of their TV or their television, or any other object, or any other attachment, or any other habit, or any other obsession that takes over their life. Is basically a matter of nature being preponderant over the self, or over the seer. The insentient has become more important than the sentient. It's a very unfortunate predicament that human being finds themselves in this day and age. So reversing that trend is what we're about. It would be nice, all well and good, as my teacher used to say, if we knew the self, then we wouldn't even need to do practice, spiritual practice. It would only be a matter of keeping the mirror wiped clean, as Shankara used to say. And so you could see yourself in it, your true self, that is, perfectly. But since that's not the case, and some of today's culture and people are coming from a perspective that is already materialistic when they're born into this world, and has already forgotten the rule of thumb, basically, that you're not the body, you're not the form, you're not a name, but you're the nameless, formless essence. That's what we mean by raising your children with the truth. As soon as they can understand words, and before Maya, that queen of all four-letter words, if you know what I mean, gets a hold of the minds of people, then it's probably better to insert these wisdom teachings first, so that they can ponder those, so that when these other options or alternatives come to them via peer pressure or via society and its habits, or meeting with unsavory beings, that they will already have the right orientation. And we know from the path of Vedanta and the path of Buddhism that right orientation is one of the main teachings. That is, Sri Ramakrishna used to speak of it in terms of holy company or good company. That is, if somebody hangs out with bad company, then all of the negative propensities of their mind will begin to surface. And if somebody hangs out with holy company, then all of the holy propensities in their mind will begin to surface. It's just a matter of the mind being rather like a crystal, they say. If you put it in front of a red flower, it turns red, and put it in front of a green flower, it turns green. So wherever you put the mind, it's going to follow suit, like company, or like attracts like. So as parents, as teachers, as just friends who want other friends to be safe and protected in the Dharma, then everyone has that responsibility to make sure and create good company, holy company if possible. Good company is okay, holy company is better. So therefore, we begin to look for our teachers early on. Even the wise beings do this. They look for their teachers. In our own case with Sharada Ramakrishna Vivekananda associations, when we read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we find that he took many teachers, men and women, of different traditions. And because he wanted to know everything he could about the divine reality coming from those traditions. And when he was a quick study, when he had learned those, or you might say relearned his own mind, relearned everything that was in his own being, and then he began to exemplify it. And then that's, of course, full mature yoga. It doesn't have anything to do with twisting the body into pretzel shapes or turning your lungs into a pair of billows. You see, basically it's about learning one posture, sitting there, seeing yourself, and then emanating the wisdom that's in the self. As easy and natural as any other matter in your life. It should be second nature to you. In fact, probably first nature would be better, your essential nature. So we talked about the jnana matra, the intelligent particle, millions and millions of them in your mind. Cannot be seen. There's no jnana matra electron microscope, nothing that you can use except your own third eye, you might say. There's your sort of equivalent to electron microscope. If thine eye be single, you shall know the truth. So you open that third eye and you look. That vision goes within, doesn't it? You take the external and you turn it into the internal. And then you make one consciousness out of them. And then you pass your time contentedly and be free, is how Shankara put it. He was the one that said, polish your mirror of your mind every day so that your vision of God will be perfect. So it's a beautiful way of instruction, isn't it? Just take what is external and connect it with what's internal. That is, fire with sight, and earth with smell, and water with taste. Take the 5 elements and connect them with your senses. And then you will have a connected life to begin with. Because as we said before, many people are walking around with a sort of fragmented awareness about that fact. You know, it's like the world and they themselves are 2 different things. So you see how many layers of Maya are there. Basically, the senses are more real and the senses are part of the body, and the body is more real, and then nature is separate from me. There's at least 3 layers of ignorance there, which can be removed by the teachings of connection. Basically, connect those 5 elements to your senses, and connect those senses and body back into the mind, because it's from the mind that all of this spilled out, from the thought process. And that's the secret of in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Everything comes spilling out from the Word, which is basically, if you want to put it scientifically, like saying a vibration. However, the vibration of a jnana matra, jnana, wisdom, matra, particle, it's a very ancient Sanskrit term, so you knew that they knew about this. The nature of a jnana matra is more eternal, is more resplendent, is more essential, is more lasting, is more substantial. Therefore, if you were to look at an object and you are only seeing its external component, then you haven't connected back to the object in your mind. For instance, as Ramana Maharshi said, this is dream number 1, right here. And then it comes from dream number 2, your dream state tonight. And you take them both and you render them. There's 5 elements in one, and there's 5 senses in one, and there's 5 elements in another, and 5 senses in another. That is, you see, taste, touch, and hear in a dream tonight. So you have 5 subtle senses. It means you have a subtle body. That's already clarification for you, so that basically you can begin to turn your dreams into radiant meditations. There's a song in India that says that. There's a man who has come to me from a land that never sleeps. Now, all my dreams have become radiant meditations, like his. See? I saw a man who wasn't just dreaming out of fantasy or out of imagination or out of wishfulness or wistfulness. He was actually connecting the external dream to the internal dream, so that dreamer awake, you must, which is another song in India, which is very beautiful. Dreamer awake, you must. You walk through this land sleeping in a waking state. So you are asleep as you wake. So if you were awake, when you were awake, you'd have yogic insomnia. See? And you would be in an ever-awake state. And you could take that into all levels of your existence. Basically, that's the secret of the seers, is that they're awake in every level of their existence, in the waking state, in the dreaming state, and even in the deep sleep state, where no objects exist, no ego exists, no worlds exist, except in potential. They exist in potential there. So these are connections to make in your everyday thinking process, as we just chanted. See. Now, to make those connections, it would be very good for the aspirant, whether he be Eastern, Western, or he or she, or old or young, or illiterate, however they consider themselves. It would be very good for that person to begin to think in terms of a particle that is subtle, a particle that's even causal. Gross, subtle, and causal. Begin to think in terms of threes. Those are called triputis. The word is spelled A-U-M, Om. It has 3 matras, doesn't it? So right there are 3 Jnana matra particles that you're to meditate on. And when you hear about them, you find that the A is the waking state, and the U is the dreaming state, and the M is the deep sleep state. Who knows this about the Om? They just go and they sit somewhere, chant a few songs, and then they say Om. But they don't know what Om means. How many meanings are attached to the word Om? That is, creation, preservation, and destruction, or the A-U-M of Om. And according to the seers of India, if these 3 matras, A, U, and M, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, creation, preservation, and destruction, are left unconnected, then there is worldliness, then there is ignorance, then there's forgetfulness. Then there's a series of births in ignorance. Everyone from thousands of years prior to Buddha, and then forward from Buddha all the way to present times, in the form of Swami Vivekananda, has said so. There's a series of births in ignorance. But if these 3 matras of Om are connected, if your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states are connected, if creation, preservation, and destruction are seen as one force held in 2 hands, called projection and withdrawal, and that is understood, then the illusion of death is wiped out of your mind. Therefore, the 5th and lowest hell is gone. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Because fear of death is called the lowest of all hells to fall into. You, the eternal soul, birthless and deathless, are thinking in terms of dying someday. Speak about orientation. You better rectify that orientation right away, because there is no death for the soul. Really, there is no death for the mind either. The mind simply goes on and takes more bodies. Here we come back to the idea of connection. Is my body born because of the ovum and the sperm getting together in the womb, creating a fetus that therefore becomes a baby and grows up and develops a brain, and the whole complex then dies, and that's the end of the picture? That's called the material cause. But what about the primal cause? What about the remote cause? What about the causeless cause? There are at least 3, 4, maybe 5 different levels of cause and effect that you're overlooking when you're thinking in terms of death. Immediately, death begins to reveal its great secret to you. The Lord of Death, Yama, actually counseled Nachiketas in the Katha Upanishad about what was beyond him. There is a deity for death. It's not a grim reaper like in the West. He's not walking around with a sickle. A sickle. Actually, a cycle's a good word there. Freudian slip, thank you. Although Freud never had Oriental people on his therapy table. If he did, he would have found out that there are people who believed in other births, who births are beforehand. So this idea of birth and death and the birthless, deathless soul is stated very nicely in the Gita. He says, Arjuna, you're about to go out on the battlefield to destroy your enemies. That is, you should know that birth and death are unreal. And the Atman is immortal. Atman is the name for soul in our tradition. The eternal soul, not soul with a small s, that goes from heaven to earth to hell, but soul that's all-pervasive soul, all-pervasive. So if you cannot understand this soul that's all-pervasive yet, go meditate on it. If you can't understand that, go meditate on it. But also then understand that even if you believe in birth and death, that everything that is born will die, and everything that dies will be born again. So he gives them two options there to think in terms of non-dualism or qualified non-dualism. But either way, you see, death is an illusion, no matter which way you look at it. In one, it's only momentary passage. It's a way of taking a soul in a journey of transmigration. And in the other way, it only, as one song in India again sings, only performs a very meager function in the land of the Divine Mother of the Universe. Death is a servant, a menial servant in her wisdom realm. So wisdom realm means these intelligent particles in us are birthless and deathless. If we meditate on them, we begin to realize the eternal nature of existence. As Vivekananda said, you can destroy the clay cup, but you can never destroy the thought clay cup. That's eternal. It goes on, and that thought exists in your mind, and that thought consists of jnanamatras, intelligent particles. So remember, we ended with this chart last time about the power of intelligence. Pratibha, it's called, flint-like intelligence. You can keep a flint in the water for 100 years, but if you take it out and strike it on the stone, even when it's wet, it'll still throw sparks. So your intelligence is like that, even though it might be kept in the water of worldliness and sin and ignorance and misapprehension, density, darkness. If you could but once get a hold of it and take it out from its hiding place and strike it against, say, these teachings, it would immediately throw sparks. Those sparks are like jnanamatras. They show the inherent nature of pratibha, of this power of intelligence that exists in every mind, in every being. It just simply needs to be brought out and manifested, that's all. And this life and this world is your opportunity to do that. In ignorance it won't happen, and in non-duality it doesn't need to happen. So here's your opportunity to bring your own wisdom out and manifest it and express it. See, that's what this class is all about, and that's what the guru-disciple relationship is all about, and that's what the avatars and the other great beings coming to earth is all about. There's no other purpose than that. So this quote says it very well, will kick us off into the teachings on the Jnanamatra. Everything, the world, manifestations therein, enjoying, suffering, and departing, the power of conjuring realms of name and form, can and should be directly designated and attributed to one's own intelligence. All these things are happening by the power of your own intelligence. Other factors such as fate, destiny, karma, and even grace also reside and spring from that self-same power. Therefore, if you're praying for the grace of God, then look into what God has already given you in the form of your own intelligence, and you'll find grace there. Now, take that grace out and bestow it upon yourself. Every day, as long as it takes to do away with the false misapprehension that grace is somewhere off in the distance. It will never come to you. Or that it needs to come and go at all. See, grace is inherent in the intelligent particle, and the intelligent particle is in you, like little Russian dolls held back inside of each other. See, that's why you made that connection between the external and the internal, to render them into one indivisible state, so that you could begin living in oneness. If you never make that connection, what do you expect? That your mind is going to be fragmented, that you're going to get Alzheimer's eventually, you're going to forget everything. You haven't developed the retentive power of memory in your own cell, in your own wisdom cell. See? So that's why, and going back to our main chart on the Jnanamatra, the cell has a protective cell wall called retentive memory, Smriti. That's Mother's gift to you. That's God's gift to you. We pray in the Chandi, say, Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chetanete Abhidhyate Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Smriti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. I salute thee, O Mother, existing as the wisdom power in all beings. How does she exist as wisdom in all beings? In particles. Just like objects have particles, everything has particles. Your intelligence also has particles. These are very powerful particles, not only to the individual, but to the collective humanity. That is, the 7 or 8 billion people who are now existing on this loka, called Burloka. And the billions and billions of souls that are existing in the Pranakasha, or Uvarloka, heaven they might call it, or the realm of your ancestors. Much intelligence there. If it were amassed, it would be Chidgana, you see. Chidgana means a mass of consciousness. And sentient, fully sentient. So this protective cell wall is called remembering. This is smriti. Don't forget to remember. Don't forget to remember your Divine Mother. Many, many songs there in the wisdom tradition. For instance, say, Etani vinati raghunandana se chittaham sahamara bitauji chittani humam sahamvansana se chittaham sahamara bitauji Chittaham sahamara bitauji Chittaham sahamara bitauji Chittaham sahamara bitauji Itani vinati raghunandana se. Oh mind, never forget the name of Sri Ram. Sri Ram, may my mind always be in constant memory of him, like a soaring swan freed from a cage, see? And always returning to the refuge of Sri Ram's holy feet. So you can put this in terms of wisdom, jnanam, but you can also put it in terms of sweetest bhakti, sweetest songs. I mean, basically, when people have these realizations of wisdom within them, then they have to manifest it, as we just said, right? So they'll express it in various ways, through stotrams, through bhajans, through songs, through singing and dancing in the bhakti tradition, and all of it pregnant with meaning. None of it is just for a whim or for fun or for a farce or for just capering around, cutting capers, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say. It's to express this divine wisdom which is in. Which is within. All knowledge lies within you. Kingdom of heaven is within you, however you want to say it. So the power of retentive memory is there, you see, in the cell. Smriti rupena samstita. In the very form of Mother Wisdom, it's there in you. Becoming assured of that fact is called enlightenment. So don't keep yourself from enlightenment for another second. Find this Mother Wisdom within and affirm it, and then take it and express it to your friends, to your family, to your children especially, and realize that the world is made of more than just atomic particles. It's made of a subtler kind of particle, wisdom, intelligence. It's all sentient, it's all vibrating. And that death is an illusion thereby. It's a birthless, deathless cell. It only, when the cell wall becomes weak, then it begins to forget, that's all. It's never destroyed. It just becomes forgetful. And things of all kinds cause it to forget, see. Like fascination with name and form and appearances. And others like, Namajapane kyun jordiya Ramana Napane kyun jordiya Why have you forgotten the Lord's name? And instead thinking about money all the time. Don't you know that Ram is the owner of the whole universe? Why should you be flattering the millionaire? Why don't you flatter the Lord instead? Why don't you think about the Lord instead? Namaja Panekyun, always chant the name of the Lord. Oh, this wisdom particle causes you to think of wisdom itself. Wisdom of the sweetest kind. That's why the seers are in tears, or in eyes rolling up in the head, and hair standing on the ends of the arm, and skin horripulating. In Hawaii, what do we call that?
Chicken skin.
Chicken skin, brother. Oh, so you get chicken skin. In spiritual life, you get a kind of chicken skin that's much more substantial. It's not just because you were scared by some walker, ghost walker, yeah, the marcher. It's that you had a vision of divine reality within you, and that gave rise to real things, not unreal things, not phantoms or imaginations, but a vision of reality. And then a burning bush, or appearance of a seer along the road to Damascus, or seeing your Ishtam in deepest meditation, or having dream vision, Swapna Siddha. All these things are possible once you enter into that kingdom of wisdom within you. So these things that are keeping us out, attachment to money, to name, to fame, to conventional religion only, to morals and ethics only. When we have the opportunity here to enter into the Dharma is a beautiful thing. It's a precious thing for all seekers of truth. It saves us from rounds of birth and death as a good boy or a good girl. Dharma is beginning to lead you beyond good and bad, beyond pleasure and pain. Not just seeking pleasure, but getting beyond the idea that you can have pleasure without pain, like a post-mortem emancipation in heaven. So it gets you beyond those kinds of strange ideas. It begins to make you think in terms of your eternal soul, not in terms of the finite, in terms of the infinite. Nitya, anicca, vastu viveka, the difference between the eternal and the non-eternal things. So let's waken our Jnana Matras. There are thousands of them in there, even one. Even one of them, one little teaching is like a Jnana Matra. So if you just take one teaching and concentrate on it for a few days in meditation, you walk around the world with that in your mind, doing your work just effectively and as sort of like a machine, like an automaton. But your mind is really on these beatific vision within you, see, and all that it has to offer you. It keeps you going. That's why Christ and Buddha and Krishna and those kinds of beings were the most energy effective mechanisms we've ever known. Haven't they lasted the longest? Christ's name for 2,000 years, Buddha's for 2,550 years, Krishna's for thousands of years. Nobody's forgetting them. They were the greatest, most efficient, subtle energy mechanisms that we've ever seen. Because they didn't live by bread alone, for instance. Maybe they lived by a different kind of particle. Annam means particles of food. Anna, right? But it can also mean these more refined particles of prana. You live by prana, not by food, but from the prana that's in food. Your senses see by an energy that's subtle. That is, the power of the eyes to hear, power of the eyes to see, and the power of the ears to hear are different than the eye and the ear itself, a flap of skin and a fleshy orb. So there's a power there. And if you collect those powers of the five senses and put them all in the heart, they say, as yoga asks you to do, then you've got a great power for spiritual awakening. If your senses only go outward, then you're frittering away the energy, the potential there. But if you take them and bring them inward, reserve the power, place it in the heart in meditation over a period of meditations, maybe years, then this kingdom of heaven within you will begin to reveal itself to you, as it has to so many other thousands of souls. And the world still can't figure them out, why they're so damn happy, see? Why they're so content, why they're so peaceful, why they have not a care in the world, because the world is unreal, doesn't exist. Why should I have a care in the world when there are no worlds? Or when all worlds are within me? However you want to put that. So we've been through this ground already. I'm just simply reminding you. Another part of the cell is vyapakatma, pervading quality. And another part is projecting power. So the cell has these different powers, you see. Remember, we're not talking about a biological cell here. We're talking about a transbiological soul. We're talking about a spiritual entity. And infinite in number, just like there are infinite particles. So if we talk about something that can project its intelligence, can also pervade everything as it's projecting, and is also the force itself of the projecting power. See, that is, all these particles exist within us, and we exist inside the Great Mother. See, that is the mother of all wisdom. The Vak Devi, the power, the mother of the word, so forth. They have different names for her. The Shakti power, sometimes they're talking about. So all of this is your sort of what makes up this intelligent particle cell wall. And it's retentive, you see, it's strong against forgetfulness. Once you learn about it, you can never forget it. Which is why some things you do memorize and you never forget, like the wisdom chants and the peace chants and the scriptures and so forth. You memorize them, you'll never forget them, and they fuel your meditations. If you're in a dire situation, immediately your mantra comes up. You see, oh, I think I'm going to leave the body, and your heart starts racing, and you're thinking this is the end. Then the mantra kicks in. See, I'm birthless and I'm deathless. And then you wake up again inside your body. Oh, I'm not leaving yet. See, I was just meditating. I went to the far fringes of relativity, and I caught a glimpse of the Absolute. That's all. There was a story of Sri Ramakrishna and the young Narendra, Swami Vivekananda, as a teenager. So Sri Ramakrishna asked him, if you were a fly and there was this big bowl of nectar here, what would you do? And Vivekananda, the young Naren, said, I'd light on the edge of the bowl and crane my head over and sip the liquid with my tongue, being very careful not to fall in and drown. And Sri Ramakrishna laughed uproariously, and he said, no, that's the nectar of immortality. You can't drown there. That's your true nature. You want to dive in. So the fly is rather foolish. The human soul knows. That's the nameless, formless essence out of which all names and forms have come. You might call that a pool of potential, like the word Om is a pool of potential, wisdom potential, where all these souls are, where all these particles are collected. That is, if the form gives way, the particle are merging into the one ineffable ocean of consciousness, the sorrowless ocean of light, as Patanjali, the father of yoga, called it. Ashoka Jyotishmata, the sorrowless ocean of light. Nice metaphor to meditate upon. See, inside of yourself, consisting of billions and billions of intelligent particles. No wonder they get blissful, see, when they connect inside with that. There's no doubt about it. Peace first, then bliss. You get peace that passes all understanding, and then you get this ananda. It's not something like joy and sorrow or happiness and misery or something. See, it's more like this unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss of your true nature. So we went around this whole cell and we looked at wisdom intelligence, that is pratibha, and we looked at metta, mental acuity. We looked at a lot of these facets of this, leaves of this lotus, if you might say. And as we were just speaking, I was going to talk to you about the arupa manunasha, the dissolving power, and how it also can project itself again. See, that's why these are beginning to be connected. So here's a new chart that I want to show you that has not been shown yet. It's called The Real Meaning of Objects. And I think it will be helpful to us in the context of the Jnanamatra teaching to look at it. It will afford us a view that is aided by this image here you see of the tree, because, well, I should just read the first quote for you, as you probably can't read it from that distance. Most beings, beholding physical objects such as trees, animals, plants, etc., assume them to be real or actual. However, modern science has uncovered the atomic particle tree. Philosophy teaches us about the illusory tree, its display being only an appearance. The luminaries, going deeper, speak of the Atman tree, or Buddha nature tree. Thus there are three levels to existence: the external, the internal, and the absolute. Knowing about this triple subdivision, along with the nature of each, the human mind espies the truth about all manifestation and swiftly frees itself from bondage to objects. So we see here as some of the teachings that I've mentioned earlier already here in bold. Let's look at those first. Yogic rules pertinent to objects. That is, if you went to a yoga teacher, and I'm not talking about hatha here or pranayam, that is somebody who's teaching you about the sentient self and its relation to Brahman, Jivatman and Paramatman, the connection between the apparently individualized self and the true self, and how to break down the subdivisions or the lines of demarcation that are at present standing in the way of that oneness or realization. These yogic teachings would teach you, number one, that objects are empty. Now, when they say empty, or maybe use a Sanskrit word, say shunyata, empty of what would be the question. So you see there, A, empty of abiding substance, that objects can be stolen, they can be destroyed, you can get bored with them, they can be stolen. I've just said that. So basically there are several ways in which objects are reasons for caution. They can also cause suffering, so you want to detach from them. So empty of substance also means, from the standpoint of modern science, that if you could look at them, you'd see that they're just basically a vortex of swirling particles held together by some unnameable force. Or let's leave it unnameable right now. Some people would just call it, we don't know what it is. Other people would call it love. Both of those explanations a bit too simplistic, I think. So whatever holds together the congealing power of the solid object is something to be meditated on. This is why which the yogi wants you to meditate on earth, then water, then fire, then air, and then ether, so that you know the nature of the five elements that your solid, liquid, gaseous world is made of. From there, once you know that, and you become akamai, as we say in Hawaii, in the know about these five elements, then you can begin to look at it in terms of energy. You've looked at it in terms of matter now. Now look at it in terms of energy. Then look at it in terms of thought. So matter, energy, and thought are the three levels of meditation that you would undertake. Meditating, if you want, on the worlds, on the heavens, and on your own intellect. These are triputis again, triple teachings, which give you some homework to do. If you went to school when you were younger, you had homework to bring home. You're coming to this class to hear about the Jnana Yoga path, you also should go away with some homework that should be done in your deepest meditations. That is, memory work first, some study of scripture, and then some deep meditation is going to be a winning combination for any spiritual aspirant to destroy and do away with ignorance forever. There's another beautiful song in India. One day I awoke, and my ignorance was gone, gone, utterly gone. Who can veil the truth? Who can keep a blazing fire tied in a cotton cloth? So this is a soul who, through long meditations and study of scriptures and doing that homework for spiritual life, awoke one morning and could not remember what ignorance was like anymore. It would be something like, can you remember how hard it was for you to learn something in kindergarten and first grade, and then you learned it, and then that was gone forever. You never had that ignorance anymore. You learned how to do something, it was gone. Just like that, in spiritual life, ignorance is really substanceless. Which brings us back to this teaching. It really has no substance, does it? It's empty of any abiding substance, objects. And that would be a rule of thumb. The second rule of thumb would be, it's empty of the ability to fulfill. That's a big one. So you see, basically, the first one happens on the level of philosophy, intellectual learning. The second one happens on the level of emotions, because basically people are trying to fulfill themselves in the world of objects and failing to do so. Either they get a little bit of fulfillment for a while from riches and from money and so forth, as we just sang about, and then that goes away, and they have to replace it with something else. And so they're always searching amongst an empty world for some kind of fulfillment. If you had learned this when you were very young, not to get attached to objects, then you would not be going through this suffering about it right now. You'd not be having to learn that lesson. But instead, there's a grasp, a death grasp even, of many souls on the atomic particle. For medicine, for science, for health, for even religion. They're clinging to heaven, for instance. That's clinging to a kind of particle, or a kind of level, or a kind of conception that heaven is real. But far beyond earth and heaven and hell is this state of one indivisible consciousness. There are no worlds in Brahman. In the Almighty Father, there are no worlds. Those worlds lie in the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God, you see. So you can't assign worlds to Brahman, to the Almighty Father. No worlds there. There's just this nameless, formless mass of pure conscious awareness. And you became like a hailstone and fell into it. An ocean of bliss. Now, there's no thought of individuation. There's no thought of separating yourself out. You're not the individual anymore, you're the indivisible. So it's indescribable. There are many Sanskrit words, a lot of them beginning with A. I gathered them together once in a Tower of Truth about this indivisible, indestructible, and eternal, and all-pervasive reality, which is yourself. So, if you're looking for God in the world, you should give that up, because God's not here. The world is in God. You should start looking at it that way. And that God that you're looking for, in which all worlds exist, is the Word. That's the apex of all creation. That's the spilling forth point. That's Om, A-U-M. I'll show you a chart on that in a minute when we finish this one. The 3 matras of Om, and how they pair up so nicely with our Jnana Matra, intelligent particle. So back to this teaching, those under that category that objects are empty, what? They're empty of substance. Science has even proved that to you. And they're also empty of the power to fulfill you. That's what we should have learned early on. Your parents should have taught you, say, you cannot own anything. You might come up to me and say, I'd like to own nice things. Can I have nice things? Why can't I have nice things? Oh no, you can never have them. You can never own anything. You should get that straight right away, my dear. Do not get attached, do not own, do not covet the goods of other beings. That's in the scriptures. But you can move amongst them. You can move amongst nice things. You should just move amongst them by way of association, but never by way of identification. You associate with them, you never identify with them, because it's not just a slap your hand, no, no, don't have that, you can't have that teaching. It's based on these principles of philosophy. They're empty, that is, they're not what they appear to be, and they're not also going to fulfill the promise of fulfillment that is lurking on their exterior. Oh, come, come, enjoy me, enjoy me. But that enjoyment is finite. And in fact, if you enter into it as a path, as the West has done, it's called the Boga Marga. Kind of a bogus Marga, if you ask me. But Boga means enjoyment. It's the path of enjoyment. And it's leading nowhere except into more lifetimes of seeking substance where there is none. So the Jnana Marga, that's what you're learning here. You see, how to detach, how to look more towards the seer and away from the seen. Divide the seer and the seen, because the two are having an unholy relationship right now. What you want is a healthy relationship with the seen. Air, earth, fire, water, ether, objects, worlds. Everything that is seen will become obscene unless you become the seer. See? And it'll turn into a cause for suffering for you. Everyone says so. Patanjali, father of yoga, Vedavyas, the father of Vedanta, Lord Buddha, father of Buddhism. They all say so. And these are the spiritual authorities of the world religions, but we're not going to listen to them? It doesn't make sense. If you have a court case, you go to a lawyer. If you have an illness, you go to a doctor. But if you have the illness of forgetfulness of the true nature of things, you're going to have to go to a seer. And they will tell you, they will clarify for you what your illness is and what the remedy for it is. So if you've already fallen into the misapprehension that objects and worlds are real, you should gain that wisdom and that meditative power in your own jnana matra and resist, detach, pull back, and become the witness again. You see, if we wanted to segue right now into that, here it is, Sakshi Chaitanya, the witness intelligence that's a part of that cell. There's a power of detaching in that cell. Actually, you use that, you open up that cell and you say, what's going to be good for me today in the makeup of my own intelligence? I think I'll concentrate on this aspect called witness consciousness. I think I will practice witness consciousness today. I'm not the body, I'm not the prana, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intelligence, I'm not even the great mind, I'm not even the word. I am pure consciousness, Shivaham, Shivaham. I am Shiva, I'm Shiva. I am the witness of all phenomena. I'm never the phenomena itself. That's a show. That's a sleight of hand of Maya. That's a misrepresentation of the truth. An object is the misrepresentation of the truth. At best, it's a manifestation or an expression of God. At worst, it's an outright illusion and a cause for attachment and bondage. And forgetfulness then of everything that's infinite. You've traded the finite for the infinite. Instead of assaying the pure gold of your own intelligence, you've now traded it away for a world of glass marbles. I'm quoting a song again. You've now traded away the gold at the center of your being for a world of glass baubles, marbles, that have just a few moments enjoyment. You ever seen the kids play with marbles and then just leave them? Well, actually, maybe that's a good analogy for what you should do. You should leave them when you're done with them, you see. That power of detachment then is sakshi chaitanya. It's being a witness of phenomena, never getting sucked into it as being the reality of the situation. You are the reality of the situation. And therefore you're not a phenomena, you are the witness of all phenomena. Now, the second point here among yogic rules pertaining to objects is that all objects are mental projections. Here's where the connecting power of the Jnana Matra kicks in. Basically, I could just realize these first two. They're empty and they can't fulfill me. And I could then pull a move on it. You see, I renounce it outright. That's it. I'll never, ever again have any association with objects again. And some souls can do that, and do that. And they find the final beatitude through that route. But not all beings are that strong or that full of renunciation at the outset. So probably better for them if they begin to connect it. Where did all of this come from? I should see how I got myself into this mess called embodiment. And with its many lifetime scenario. 1 embodiment, 2 embodiments, 3, 10, 100, 1,000. Pretty soon I'm in this cycle of rebirth. Samsara. I mean, we have no word for it in English. We have to say cycle of birth and death. Kind of clumsy. But if you went to a Buddhist Sangha or a Vedantist group, then you'd say Maya, Samsara. One word is enough to cause the mind to remember the predicament that the human soul has fallen into. The very same predicament we saw in this chart, isn't it? Here's the elephant here, the soul. Here's the crocodile coming out of the waters of existence, causing him suffering. Has to pray to the ideal, Vishnu. Vishnu brings the chakra, cuts off the head of the crocodile. You see, basically that's pratibandhika and all these other forms of the word pratika. Pratika really starts out meaning object, doesn't it? You meditate on a pratika or a pratima in yoga. That is, I'm looking at this world of objects. Gee, I think I'll take one of them and meditate on it. What a novel idea. See, how about a candle in a window's place? Om yato dipo nivatasto nengati sopama smritta yogino yata chitasya yungato yogam atmanaha. The yogi takes the object and concentrates on it, and his mind is firm like a candle in a windowless place, meditating on the Atman within, steeped in yoga. And that's out of the Gita, Sri Krishna's words. So I think I'll take some object in my life and I'll make it sacred, basically. I'll make it the object of my concentration. I mean, I didn't do it with my wife or my husband or my children. They weren't good enough, you see. They were just there to help me. They were my helpmates. I got pleasure from them. They caused me pleasure and sorrow both. See, there has to be one thing sacrosanct that I can take and meditate, use it as my pratika, or my pratima. So a little stone obelisk, or a candle, or a statue of Krishna, or a baby Ram or Christ. And then my mind gets steady on that one thing, and it's Tailadara Dhyan. My concentration flows out of my mind to that object and back into my mind until I find the connecting power that's doing it. The connecting power that's doing it. Tailadara Dhyan means the flow of oil from one beaker to another. Now my meditation, it's a metaphor for meditation. If I could pour the contents of my mind into another beaker like oil, there would be no splashing. It would be like a perfect rainbow arc of oil, not like water, but just this perfect flow from one container to another. And empty my contents of my mind, all its power of concentration, into the divine. Well, by practicing it outward into the pratima, eventually I'll be able to turn it inwards towards Atman. That is, there are pretty much three things inside me I can meditate on that are of the highest import: the Word, myself, and Brahman. I mean, you could take cosmic mind too, or Ishvara. So there are several things inside that you could meditate upon, like the mantra, but that's part of the Word, isn't it? Actually, when you find the Word, you'll find out the Trinity is there in the Word. So you really can't make too many distinctions at that high level of your own intelligence. You'll find the further you go inside, the more oneness is there. And the further you go out, the more fragmentation is there. See? It's like going into a bell. You strike the bell, the sound comes out, and it fragments, distorts, you see, and goes beyond the power of your thinking or your hearing, you see. But if you take it back into the sound that's inherent in the bell, that's taking you into a concept. Sound. Nada Brahma. Shabda Brahma. Nadis. Nada means sound, vibration. Nadis are nerves that carry vibration. So now you're beginning to meditate on how consciousness manifests itself outwards into objects, into bodies, and how it can retrace itself, retrace its step, and draw back everything back into the mind, back into the Word, back into Brahman. Well, this is what you want to concentrate on in your meditations every day. You don't just sit and say, okay, I did my hour. Oh, whew, glad that hour's over, I did it. You see, I can stand up now and stretch my legs. But there's got to be something that you're doing in your meditation that's helping you realize your own true nature. These are tools, these are aids. Forget about people saying, just give up your thoughts. How many can do that? For how long a time? Take these thoughts and make them sacred. Take everything and deify it. That's the tantric way. And basically Tantra and Vedanta concur with one another. And look how beautiful the school of Buddhism and Tantra, when it got together. The Vajrayana path, how beautiful that is, and how many people are being attracted to it. Basically because you're putting together deities with principles. There can be no better marriage than that. The marriage of your mind with the objects, thinking the objects would be different from you, that's hellish. You have a relationship with the world as if the world's separate from you. You haven't even made the connections yet that the world has come out of you, which is what we're talking about there. That if you want a good marriage, try that. Try putting together principles, truths, with the deities that preside over them. Deity yoga, upasana jnana, with wisdom principles, tattva gyan. Let's meditate on the wisdom principles and find the deities that are within them. And those deities you'll find inside of yourself as you meditate. Let's reintroduce ourselves to Mother Tara. Let's reintroduce ourselves to Mother Kali. Let's reintroduce ourselves to the Lord of Death, if we need to, Yama, so he can inform us what's beyond death, because that's what Nachiketas did in the Katha Upanishad. His father, in a moment of anger, said, I give you to death. It's like saying go to hell in contemporary terms. So Nachiketas followed his father's every wish. He was a good son. So he went looking for death. I guess I belong to death then. So he went looking for death, found death. Death was away for 3 days in some business. But he waited. And because he had to wait 3 days, Yama gave him 3 boons. First he said, make my father not be angry at me. It wasn't even his fault, but he was such a good son. Take my father's anger away. Teach me the secret behind sacrifice, was the second. And then tell me what's beyond you, Yama. Yama would not do the third when he asked for that boon. No, nobody knows what's beyond death. Very, very few can ever find that out. But why don't you select other things? Here, I'll give you riches, I'll give you land, I'll give you dancing girls, I'll give you foods, I'll give you everything you want. Nachiketas said, oh, I just want to know what's beyond death. So then, when you get into the 3rd, 4th, 5th chapter of the Katha Upanishad, you find this great discourse on death, by who better to give it than the Lord of Death himself, Yama. And you find out basically that death is just a sort of pivotal energy, you see, taking the soul from one transitional point to another. And so it's not really what it's been described to be, is it? Just like objects are really not what they're described to be. Solid, fulfilling, full of substance. See? Basically, if you look at the object, you find out that none of that's true. Whether you look at it with an electron microscope or with your open third eye, you'll find out none of that's true. So it's the same here in the case of death. You look at it, seemed to be something that ended my existence. But what's in the nature of the word existence? Can you not exist? Or is your nature existence itself? Or take it beyond the individual, take it to the ultimate. Brahman is existence itself. It's called Sat. Sat means existence. It's called Chit. Chit means intelligence. It's called Ananda. Ananda means bliss. It's existence, knowledge, and bliss, absolute. Satchidananda, one of the greatest words for divine reality ever coined, or ever brought forth out of the intelligent particle, because that's where it came from. We're not going to forget that word for thousands of years, for millennia, for lifetimes, for yugas, for manvantaras. For 4,320,000,000 years, objects can march on, but we'll never forget the source of objects. Or if we do, then we're lost in the realm of objects. So memorize this yogic rules pertaining to the object. Teach it to your children. Get yourself free from attachment to objects. Move amongst the objects, knowing them, knowing their true nature. And then, once you do, you'll find out God can never be objectified. That's the ultimate lesson to learn. God can never be objectified. God, whatever you want to call it, by whatever word or divine designation, is the eternal subject. It's not the passing object, the form. It's not a world, it's not the five elements, it's not your body, it's not your mind, it's not your intelligence, it's not a God, it's not an angel. It's impossible to be objectified. It's not a name and a form. And so all of a sudden we start speaking about Advaita. You see, everything that we've been learning leads up to Advaita. Now, not only do we have a few words, a few fingers to point at the non-dual reality, we have some basis upon which to understand it. I'm saying the intelligent particle is one of the most valuable ways of understanding it. If you can take it in, contemplate it in your daily meditations, deep within your heart. So those are some good rules about the object. Let's look at the rest of this. You can see how the tree has faces in it. Basically, the idea is that there is the solid appearance tree. That's what we see. And why limited to the tree? There's plants, other kinds of plants. There's the ocean out there, which we can see from our window here. There's bodies of all kinds in space and here on Earth. All of those objects then are an appearance in nature. Call it Maya, the appearance of things. If you're a aspiring truth seeker, then one of the first things you'll do if you enter a Vedantic path is to practice this art called Vivarta. Vivarta means false superimposition. Oh, I see, this is all a false superimposition over the non-dual Brahman. Houses, forms. So you don't walk around saying, oh, how beautiful, how beautiful. You walk around saying, isn't God beautiful, isn't God beautiful? Because all of this changes. What do I mean by change? It's born, and that's not very beautiful. It grows, that's difficult. It subject to birth, growth, disease comes, decay comes, old age comes, and death comes. How beautiful can a world be if those are the 6 transformations that are a part of it? How beautiful can it be when the beings in it give rise to lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, shame, pride, pride of caste, pride of lineage, grief, delusion. In other words, called the 6 passions and the 8 fetters. If those are your playmates at recess, then is this such a playground? So, vivarta, false superimposition. Everything here is an appearance, and I must see through it. I am the Sherlock Holmes of the Vedantic school. I am now going to look for clues behind the appearance of things, which will show me the true nature. The true nature of the world should come first. Basically, I can put it in 1 or 2 words. Mutable, changing, transitory, ephemeral. Shall I go on? Get out your Thethereth. Daffy Duck, get out the Thethereth. And find as many words for changing as you can find, and then apply them to this world, because that's what it is. I was in a women's prison once, changing, which was changing, yes. And I was teaching this particular truth, and somebody asked me to give an example. I said, oh, well, I just drove by my childhood home on the way to this prison. It's about 10 miles up the road. There's an exit called Haynes Exit. That's where I grew up with my brothers and father and mother and so forth. And, you know, that was 40, 50 years ago. It's all gone now. The whole hill has been raised. The forests have been cut. My father and mother are dead. My 2 collies, I had dogs that were collies. No wonder I liked collies so much. They're both dead. My siblings are gone. My house isn't standing anymore. Should I continue to live in the memory of my childhood home? So everything is constantly changing. And if I look into it, at a billionth of a second, it's changing that fast. My mind just slowed it down so I could enjoy some 19 years of deference to upbringing and family and school, which I didn't like. Time became slowed down, solidified in my mind. Objects came out of my mind and solidified for me. I was surrounded by pratikas and pratimas, but I didn't know how to meditate on them. Instead, I was taught to own them. This is my teddy bear. This is my bed. This is my room. This is my house. These are my parents. How many parents have we had in this march of lifetimes? How many children have we had? How many times have we suffered at their death? How many times have we rejoiced at their birth? I mean, everyone likes to see a baby, but nobody wants to be a baby. Isn't it? Or do you like to be helpless and not able to do anything for yourself? You know, have your diapers changed all the time? Is it so fun? So this changing world is ephemeral. Know the nature of it. And then the next thing you're going to know is the nature of mind. And then finally, somewhere along the way there, hopefully you're going to get interested in and find the nature of Brahman. Eternal, indivisible, absolute, ultimate, all-pervasive, indestructible. Many words for it again. It's Vastu Viveka. Nitya, Anicca, Vastu Viveka again. It's separating the wheat from the chaff. Should be teaching our children as soon as they can understand words how to do that. You talk about, you know, getting your priorities straight. Mm-hmm. And maybe you talk about, you know, it's time to clean out the garage or something. It's been haunting me for months. But when the seers talk about getting your priorities straight, this is what they mean about. Well, let's get this whole shooting match together from the standpoint of who am I? And what is that? What, why, where, and when? What, name and form, why? Karma, when, time, and where, space. And finally, who? Those are the 5 W's. It would have been better to start with who and then look at the other 4. Basically, people are caught in space, in time, and doing actions and suffering the results. And that becomes a kala chakra. That's how Buddha called it. Kala means time, chakra means wheel. It's a wheel of time. And in that, people are experiencing samsara, a wheel of birth and death and ignorance. And they can't get off the merry-go-round. You say if you stay in a bathtub too long, you get wrinkled. If you stay in the bathtub of this samsara, this kala chakra too long, you get wrinkled. It means you die many times. You get old age. Everything wrinkles. So some want out. I'm done having fun in the merry-go-round. In fact, I'm getting a little nauseous. Can you stop the merry-go-round and let me out? Let me off of it. Maybe it's too late, you see. Hard to, when the thing's spinning so fast, jump off. So we go inside and we stop the process. Cease. Be still. Hum. If Divine Mother wants to stop the play, she has a bijam for it. She says the word, everything freezes in place. And she can walk away and just enjoy the peace, you see. Enough of this strife, this constant conflagration, this coming and going, this dream life, see? This projection in ignorance. Stop it all and be at peace. So don't get bored, get peaceful. Boredom means you haven't got the wisdom underneath you yet when you were forced into renunciation, when you were forced to give up that house, when you were forced to lose that child. When it came down to the end, you didn't have the wisdom behind you to know that the house exists in your mind, the child is an eternal soul. And you can never lose those things. You cannot destroy those things. They're indestructible because they all came out of the indestructible word. And the word is full of indestructible particles. I just need to get a hold of those and get into that stream. See, there's a stream of particles going towards matter, and there's a stream of particles going towards enlightenment. One's called samsara pragbara, and one's called koivalya pragbara. Koivalya means freedom from nature. You have to declare your freedom from nature. It's not going to be a popular notion in today's world, because most people are tired of the conglomerate machine, the political process, the conventional run of things, conventional religion. Even the houses and homes and children, you get tired of them. They all end after a while. They're not eternal. So that's boredom in the end, isn't it? But with these wisdom teachings, if you're manned with them again, if they become yours, if you open this flow of intelligent particles, you get out of that stream of material particle and you get into that stream of wisdom particle, and there's no stopping you from then on. Boredom gets bored. You make fear afraid of itself. You put death in its own grave. So instead of from the cradle to the grave, as my teacher used to say, going on in ignorance, you put death in its own grave and never return to the cradle again. Neither your individual cradle nor the cradle of civilization doesn't interest you anymore. It didn't interest Lord Buddha, and he saw through it. And he got off for good. Luckily, he came back. That's called an avatar, and I don't mean that in the Hollywood sense. that one who descends from such a position to demonstrate to us the beauty and of this infinite divine nature that we share. Now, the way people should be living together, like this, in a sangha, eating together, breathing together, sleeping together, learning together. A hui, we call it in Hawaii, a family only based in spirituality. You see, in the West, none of these spiritual communities that were there in the 70s and 80s are existing anymore. They all died because they didn't have a common spiritual foundation like this to base themselves in. So I asked the Westerners and everyone in the world to start creating communities based on these wisdom teachings and get together every day and study them, destroy your ignorance forever, and know the real meaning of oneness. It won't be a cliche anymore to us. We'll know the unified nature, the essence, the homogeneous nature of all things, all beings. So that's what we'll end this half with. And we'll take a break and show some of these charts to our live streaming audience. Hopefully ponder the way to treat objects and the way to look at the fact that you can connect them back to your own mind. And we'll talk more about that at the beginning of the second half. So here we'll take our break. Thank you for joining us. Om Asato, Om Asato Ma Sadgamoya, Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya, Abira Bira Mayeti, Rudrayate Dakshinamukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.
Sarva Mangalam Dosha